there! Welcome to the Aspect Podcast Network, the home of Bending the Narrative. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button below and be the first to listen to our new episodes and other shows from the Aspect, covering topics such as Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and more. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Kate Kronquist, and joining me every week to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of Avatar is Alex Batts. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm good. Very excited to be back. Super hyped to dive into all of book 2. So we're back, book 2, Earth. We're starting with one of the more unique episodes of the series, the Avatar State.
Mm-hmm. And let's kick off this season by tracking Team Avatar's journey on our handy dandy map here. So we've traveled quite a way since the end of book 1.
Yeah,
We're
they made some
kind of halfway around the world.
Yeah, so we had
yeah.
left off in the North Pole, and they have gone all the way down to, they're now below the equator. They're in the southern hemisphere now, which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
Making their way towards the Earth Kingdom, which is super cool. Yeah, they made like more progress in between the seasons than I feel like Distance covered them.
Than the whole first season.
Yeah, pretty much. Like they traveled a ridiculous amount. I like that the map kind of shows the like proposed path that they probably took like all the way down, because we have to like kind of assume. But yeah, I mean, they went through so much on the way there, which is wild.
It's a lot. I mean, they were on the boat at first. They launched from that boat, so I think they were probably sailing most of the way, and then they took Appa to get to this Earth Kingdom base here. So it's pretty far. And then we also have Zuko and Iroh a little bit up at their little Fire Nation resort and spa, it seems.
Oh my god, yeah, no, they're just like hanging out. They're just having a fine time. But yeah,
I need to go there. Need to book an appointment there.
It would be the best, honestly. It seems like just the most like relaxed environment and just like peaceful, like tranquil. It's like, okay, they need a little bit of like recuperation after just the absolute wreck that was the North Pole.
Yeah.
So yeah, book 2, episode 1 is directed by Giancarlo Volpe and written by the team of Aaron Hazaz, Elizabeth Welch, Tim Hedrick, and John O'Brien. And if you're just joining us for season 2 for the first time, first of all, welcome. You should definitely go back and check out our season 1 episodes. And also, we will be discussing the show in its totality. So be warned about spoilers for each episode. For season 1, we did a more like play-by-play breakdown of each episode, and we wanted to mix it up a bit for season 2. So we're going to be doing a quicker rundown, kind of like this episode in under 3 minutes type of thing, and then we'll dive deeper into the discussion. So I have some notes. I literally called it a TLDR in my notes to like get through it. So in this episode, we see the gang go to an Earth City kingdom to like pick up an escort on the way to Omashu. The general there, General Fong, is weirdly obsessed with using the Avatar State as a like weapon of mass destruction, essentially. I literally nicknamed him General WMD in my notes because he is just he's all about that. Like that's his number one goal.
That is his focus.
So we see him, we meet Azula for the first time. Well, we saw her at the end of season 1, and like had
just a little cliffhanger.
Yeah. So we meet Azula properly. She's a fantastic villain, like right from the jump. And then we also see that she's there to tell Iroh and Zuko that Zuko is being welcomed back home. Their father, changed his mind. He thinks that family is the most important. Iroh is really skeptical about this. He's like, this doesn't feel right. But we get that kind of plot thing going on. Aang, meanwhile, contemplates whether or not he should help the general use the Avatar State to like end the war. They do some tests trying to like get it out. Doesn't work. And then the general is like, all right, well, I guess the best course of action is to just attack you. And all of the Earth Kingdom people attack Aang. Spoiler alert, that does not go well for them. Aang essentially goes like
not
nuclear,
a good idea.
Obliterates the entire circle. He does. Like he just obliterates everything. Like it literally looks like a
Oppenheimer of Avatar.
Yeah. Like from a bomb, and obliterates the entire circle. It's a big circle. Like when you say it just like takes out the circle, it kind of sounds like insignificant, but like it's a big area that he just obliterates. But not before he learns some more about the Avatar State. He gets like some exposition knowledge, which is some super cool stuff, talking about how if you're killed in the Avatar State, the reincarnation cycle stops, how powerful it is, and like it getting the knowledge and energy and all that from his past lives. So we get that. He like takes out the general dude. Actually, Sokka does, which is really cool. He like pops him at the end, and then the gang goes to be on their way. And they're like, "Hey, do you want an escort?" And they're like, "No, I think we're fine." So
We're
the
done with
gang
you guys.
the gang goes to leave for Omashu, and meanwhile, Zuko and Iroh go to board Azula's ship, but one of the captains, I believe he's a captain
Mhm,
or
mhm.
below Azula, yeah, um, reveals that they're going to be prisoners, blows it, absolutely just fumbles his one job as they're boarding the ship. A fight ensues. We get Azula just toying with Zuko. Like he's so ridiculously outmatched here. It's
It's
crazy.
insane. It was honestly, I was like, you know what? This is what fighting with your younger sister is like.
She's just
She's
so
absolutely insane.
yeah, she outclasses him there. So we get that. She uses lightning, which is so cool to see.
Mhm.
Iroh deflects it because he's the best. Iroh's just peak badass, honestly, in this moment. Like he's like, no, no, thank you. Deflects it. Zuko and Iroh end up getting away, and then they go into the forest and are cutting off their hair to go into incognito and fugitive mode, which is a huge deal for the Fire Nation, as we've talked about in some of season one, like how sacred their hair is and important that is in their culture. So them like doing that to really be on the run fully is a big thing. And yeah, that's the episode basically. I don't know if that was probably like 4 minutes, but we'll
That was
we'll
pretty,
get
I think that was even under that.
we'll
That's
get
pretty
there.
quick.
Yeah, I try to like do that, but that's the episode. Those are the big points. So yeah, what are your kind of like favorite moments about this episode? What things like stood out to you the most? Did you have any like specific things you wanted to dive into?
Mm. Oh my gosh. I just think this episode really amped up the talent altogether with this show, with the creative
Yeah.
team. I saw a lot of, first of all, beautiful background paintings. I
Oh,
feel like I've
consistently.
seen very consistently, way more than we have in previous seasons. I don't know if that's just me now noticing it more,
No, I
but I
did
feel
definitely
like
take
their
note of that.
budget
Like,
increased, the
yeah.
writing increased, the humor. I really love the humor of this episode. There was a lot of really great jokes. If
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of some of my favorite ones, but there's a lot of really good humor, and I feel like they've really amped it up now that they have.
Yeah,
I feel like they had more freedom writing
the
wise.
like timing of the humor is just always so perfectly done, honestly.
It's so perfectly done. Poor Sokka always gets the rough end of the stick. I love when
Yeah.
in the beginning they're giving, um, who is it? Is it Coda, the dad? That's his name, right?
Oh, yeah, when he's giving all the gifts to them
The
and,
gift. Sokka just gets a pat on the shoulder.
yeah, he's like doing a good job essentially. I forget exactly what he says, but yeah, everyone else gets this hugely like important like special gift or totem they'll like will come
Mhm.
in useful or be important later on, and he's just like, "Good job, man."
And Sokka, good job.
Yeah,
That's it.
um,
Oh,
no, it's
it's just so
hilarious,
good.
honestly.
But it's really great. I love that that all amped up. And I love too that we're getting the start of Azula. We're seeing her fight. The action is back. We're right back in the action. We're
Yeah,
right back with our characters. They don't waste any time.
no, they don't miss a beat with it,
Hmm.
honestly, and the action is so good. I love Azula, unsurprisingly, is my highlight for the
Unsurprisingly,
episode.
I
Yeah.
for those who don't know, that's Alex's favorite character.
Yeah, it's a shame because by the time in post this episode, our cameras are cropped, but I have an Azula poster on the wall off screen. It's incredible. Um, but yeah, so like her introduction here is so strong. Like she's so immediately just a great villain. It's also really cool,
Mm,
and we'll talk about this kind of like later, but the importance of them having like a big like villain for the season that's not the Fire Lord that we like know
hmm.
is lingering back there. And like she just so immediately comes on and is like a very commanding presence. Like her scene when she's just absolutely bullying her, I guess like just normal guard or whatever on the ship whenever he's like, oh, we like can't dock, like the tides won't allow us. And she's like, oh really, they like won't allow us. And she like goes on this monologue basically saying that she's like debating whether or not to kill him. And he's like, all right, yeah, like we'll do whatever you say.
It's
Like she
such
just
a good line. I think she says, maybe you should worry less about the tides, who have already made up their mind about killing you, and worry more about me, who's still mulling it over.
yeah, like
I wrote in my comments, I
God.
was like, bars, bars.
Yeah, it's just
No, you got
absolutely
him.
incredible, and like all of her lines are like that.
They're so
So
good.
she's
It's so, I can't help but put a 2024 spin on it and just see her and go, girl boss.
oh, I
What's
mean,
wrong
yeah,
with a girl
it's
who has hobbies?
she's just so consistently great in that role and like getting that vibe from the very start, and you're like, oh, okay. Also, the like music around the music in general in these episodes is so good. Like it really does a lot to like elevate
Mm,
all of the scenes. Um, But yeah, she's just such a great presence, and it really is cool to see her contrast with Zuko as well. Like as the episode we get into, like her being a lot
Mm.
more ruthless in a different way than Zuko even was in season one. Like Zuko was still very like somewhat honor driven, and like I don't know. There's just an interesting difference in the way that they're both going about their goals. Like you feel that the way that Azula is trying to like deceive him and capture him and like get him to bring him back is just not something that you would really see Zuko do. Like even in season one,
Hmm.
it's just like an
They're
interesting.
very different. While
Yeah.
from the same family is very, I mean, as siblings usually are, it's very realistic, I think, the way they're written.
Hmm.
But I love to see that contrast that she's truly just evil.
Yeah, she just
Like,
she's not a
so
good person.
cruel.
Yeah, she's just bad, which I think is
Sh
another thing
Yeah.
that's cool and important about like sometimes it's a lot of times now we get villains where everyone like wants them to be like super sympathetic, and that's not
Mhm.
to say that there aren't parts of her character that later on and we'll talk about like you understand why she is like the person that she's become, but like yeah, some villains are just bad. Like they're not, we don't
And
need
she's
everyone to
campy.
like
She's evil.
yeah, she
That's
is, she's
a Bond
100%.
villain.
Yeah, she, that's a perfect way to describe it, honestly. Yeah, she like nails that level of like camp and just like no, I'm the villain of this show, and like you can clearly see that. And
But the way she's
um
also, everything she says, she's right.
yeah.
She's not wrong. They got the
Hmm.
ship in. The ship was fine. She's
Yeah, you
intense,
can
but she's a boss. She's leading an army. She's no
you can
joke.
she's so like straight to, she understands what her goals are and it's like okay, well I just need to do this and like I'll get there.
Mm.
um yeah, so she's just like an obvious high point I think for me.
Oh, yeah.
um
Do you have any other favorite parts of this episode that you really loved?
I think that the Avatar state exploration, like
Oh,
getting
yes.
into that more,
Seeing
like
Roku
it's,
again.
yeah, getting to see Roku was really cool. And I also think it's I take such notice now. I don't know. I say now. I don't know how long it's been, but like when exposition or for whatever thing is
Mm.
happening in a show or a book or a movie, because like it's something that you just have to do. But
Hmm.
it's really interesting to me to see how whatever thing will deliver that and like how much you feel as a viewer or reader or whatever, like you're like, oh, this is simply an exposition machine or an exposition moment right here, you know. And so like if you can still feel like I don't know, it's pretty impossible for me to not at least be like, oh, like this is exposition that we're getting now, but like to still know that and then be like engrossed in it and be like, no, this is super engaging and interesting still, I think is
Hmm.
really important. And I like definitely take note of that in things. And the show just consistently does it really well. Like it manages to incorporate it into the characters and the narrative beats and moments in ways that like give you that impact still and still feel interesting. And yeah, so like seeing Roku again and getting the more of like, hey, I'm here to show up and like drop some exposition about how the Avatar state works, but like it's
Which it
not you.
worked.
Yeah, but it just works. Like you can say it like that, and it sounds like cheesy and super like simple, but it just, the way that they've set up the world and everything, it still feels like it's just
Like they
cool.
justified it.
Yeah.
Like a
So
lot
yeah,
of shows
getting
do
to
that thing. They're like, you're telling me I have to do, they just keep repeating
right.
it. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe we're in the middle of the woods here with my sister and this
Hmm.
guy that we found. It's such cheesy ways to do it. And then I see it now on TV. And they always
Yeah.
do it in such a good way where I'm like, oh, sometimes I don't even realize. Sometimes I'm like, that was exposition. I didn't even realize. I didn't even
Hmm.
realize they just told me that.
I
That's
think
how
a
I
part of
found
it,
that out.
a part of it too that helps is that the myth, like the mythology that they created, is just so like interesting to begin with. So you're like, oh, I'm just hyped
Mm.
to learn more about this anytime it comes up. So yeah, we like I said in the recap thing, we learn more about the, like if he gets killed in the Avatar state, the cycle will be
Mm.
broken, which is
Hmm.
a huge deal. Like that's crazy thing
Huge.
to learn.
That's a good lore drop right there. That's some pretty
Yeah,
important information. Hmm.
like need to know basis, and he definitely,
Need
that's
to
kind of
know.
crucial. Yeah.
That's why he's like,
um
why was this not told to me before? That's kind of
right, like
important.
you would think that'd be like one of the first things that the past avatars make sure to tell the new guy, like, hey, by the way, like this is very important.
Yeah.
So getting that, and then also just yeah, the fact that it's essentially him channeling all of the energy and stuff from the past avatars, and that's why he glows and that kind of thing. It's just
Mm.
cool. Like it's just a cool look. Also, in general, like the Avatar state is just, it looks awesome, and he just goes
It
absolutely
looks awesome.
bananas. But
And
no,
it's
that
not
ties
just
in.
awesome, it's useful,
Yeah, it's super useful. It's
but it
part
has
of.
its cost.
I mean, it's also like kind of a cheat code, essentially. Like he, but I like that they give it. I mean, it's the stereotypical thing where like you give him this super outrageous power, but of course there has to be like some kind of drawback with it. And so that's how we get the, well, if he dies while he's in this, then the reincarnation stops. So like that's an important stake to attach to like literally him going God mode, right? Because like that's
Hmm.
essentially like what he is in this. And yeah, so I think it's cool that they add that and they balance that kind of like power thing well. But yeah, I kind of mentioned it in the rundown thing, but something that I did want to bring up and like talk about in this episode is I think it's really interesting, and they kind of had done this in season 1 too, if I'm thinking about it now in retrospect, but how much they do kind of like treat the Avatar state like a weapon of mass destruction in terms of like it
Yes.
being used in the world, like its effect on the world, and how this dude is like, oh, well, we can use this to end the war immediately. Like, we need to use this.
Yeah. And I
And
feel
like,
like, too, that's
whatever
a
means.
question that comes up when you're watching. You're like, if he can just do that, why can't
Hmm.
he just do that and end the war? And I do like that this episode explores, like, this is why he can't just do that. And we can't just end the show here. Like, they do put in a good reason why that's he has to do it the right way and he has to have patience. And that's, I mean, Katara says it a lot in the episode. She's like, no, we have to do this the right way, the slow way,
Hmm.
and that's I think a big theme too within the whole series of patience and teaching patience and taking that long route and not taking the easy way out.
Yeah, no, I think it's super
Mm.
interesting. They do put a big emphasis on that, which I think is really important, as you said, for the whole show and like Aang's entire like character. But it is a really interesting thing to think. I like that they give both practical and like more like ethical, just general like questions about whether or not he
Mhm.
should use it like that, because they give the practical reason of like, well, he can't do this because one, it's only triggered by like his emotional responses, right? And
Mhm.
like a defense mechanism thing, like that's a, we're baking that into the rules of how the Avatar state works, right? Like it can only be triggered
Mhm.
there, so that's a like, he can't just turn it on and off. Okay, so like that's one thing. And then also, even whenever he is in the Avatar state, like it is still dangerous for him. So like that's two really practical reasons why he just can't go God mode and like end the war immediately. Which is important for like narratively, like why we were on errands, like to learn all the
Yeah.
different thing, like right.
But like
But
why
then
we
they
have
all,
to learn all the elements and why we have to
yeah.
stay on this journey.
So that's the like practical part of it. But then they also, and like it, this episode I feel like touches on it, the ethical considerations of like, should he do that? Like,
Mhm.
should the destruction that that would cause for the people around, like, is that the right thing to do? And then also kind of talking about, and they don't like touch on this a whole lot, but I really liked Aang's comment where, and his like contemplation about feeling really guilty about being 100 years late to the war and how many lives have already
Mm.
been destroyed. And he's like, I'm
Mhm.
already late. Like if I have the power to do something to stop this now, like no matter the cost, I should do that. And I think it's a really interesting question about ethics on like a longer scale, and the fact that like he eventually comes down on the side of like needing to do things the right way, like what he sees as the more morally right way, and like take longer to do that, which will prolong the war. And it's like when you get to a certain sense of scale, like is it more ethically like right or wrong to like immediately end it there if you could, or like take a little bit more time? Like it's already been a
To
hundred
do it
years.
the
What's a
right
few more
way.
like
Yeah.
months? Like is that worth it to then like how does that calculus kind of like ring out? And so like I don't know. I don't really
Mhm.
like that's a really tough
That's
like
a
answer. And
good
I
point. Yeah, it's a tough they pose tough questions and
yeah.
they answer that. It's so good. And I do love too that he has Katara, and this is a great way to show that Katara genuinely does care about him and not just their mission to save the world. She's genuinely like, it's really hard to see you go through that
Yeah, that's a
emotional
whole other layer too.
distress. That's a
Right? Like
whole other layer. And
they
like,
give it this like interpersonal character. Like this is another reason to care besides like the grand scale of things. Like it's like, oh, Katara doesn't like seeing him in pain and like distress. And
mhm.
you're like, oh, that's another reason this would kind of suck to see if he just like did this all the time. And like
Yeah. Like that's
there's
another reason why he can't just do it. It messes him up. But yeah,
yeah, so
it's a good question.
I
Would we
think
do?
it's just super interesting that they like you can think about it in that way, and that they kind of like do treat it like that. It's a very, I don't know, it's a wild thing to think about, and having that kind of power level in the universe, like in this world, I think is just a very wild thing, and I think they handle it well. Like if you're
Oh
gonna
my God,
introduce
so
something like
well.
that, like there has
Like
to
if you're
be
gonna see the end of season one and see him destroy the whole
just
navy
go
with
like
a quite, you're like,
Quayzilla,
can he
like
just walk into the castle and do
right.
that?
Yeah, no, it's a really, it's interesting because I rewatching this episode, I was like, this is a kind of interesting premiere, like thinking about it as a season premiere, and the fact that it is kind of slower in a sense, and also it is not the same level as setting the stage as like the premiere is, but very much
Mm,
like puts the big like answers kind of the big questions that you might have from the season finale, and then like
hmm
sets the pieces up in a really like sets the big pieces up in an important way. With this one, like we get Azula and Zuko, like that's a huge thing that'll
Oh,
play out, and like the way the Avatar state works, and it kind of being a cheat code, and like how that might be things that happen more as the show goes on,
mhm.
right? Like that's a super interesting thing. So like it hits the big points, just like right from the start in a more what feels like almost low key fashion with the way the episode kind of plays out, and you're like, okay, this is just kind of like getting back into it, like type of episode.
Yeah. Like they're
Um,
finishing off, like they're really tying up all those loose ends from season one, and then they're kind of almost like replanting new seeds. They're like, okay, now we ended this. Now we're on to this. We're going to continue moving on. And I like that a
mhm,
lot too with Zuko. We get to see Zuko. It's almost like his whole problem from season one is almost solved. He's like, Father wants me back. I can go back.
mhm.
This is my mission. This is what I wanted. I don't even need to catch the Avatar. And you see him kind of almost get that. And just, oh, that switch. Ooh,
Yeah,
it's so good. And you're like, okay, no, we still have time to go. This isn't his end. He's
and
now
it
on
just
a completely new journey.
it adds an entirely new foil for him, both like emotionally and then because of Azula, and like that being now,
Mm,
it was already like one aspect of his family that was intense betrayal, right? And now you throw that on
mhm,
top of it, and then it's also one of the things that'll be, and like we get it immediately in the episode, like his father had been the like foil for him, like it was the Avatar.
mhm.
Obviously, because he's like trying to get the Avatar, but that's not really like what
Yeah.
he's against. Like he's against his father practically because he's
Mhm,
been banished. Um, but now we're getting a foil emotionally, and one that he'll like actually interact with on an episode to episode
mhm.
basis, right? Like we immediately see that like they're throwing hands
They're
before
throwing
the
hands
episode,
immediately.
like
They
before the
are
episode plays
throwing
it.
hands.
And so like I think that's a different type of engagement and kind of catharsis that you get from the audience too, to like see that, and it's a lot more not the emotional relationship and stuff that they were doing and able to get between how he like his relationship with his father in season one wasn't engaging, but this is just a different
Mm,
like level to it and a different angle of doing that, I think, and they do that
mhm.
very well here, and it's cool that they just again immediately introduce it like straight into the premiere. It's good.
And so they're like, all right, we're starting off. This is our new villain. This is what Zuko's up against. It's almost like he's up against himself. It's very, very cool. That's like who he could have been or who he wants to be, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really it's
Mhm.
just so good, and they just continue to make it better.
But especially with the end, the end of that episode
Oh,
with
it's so
Zuko, it's so good. It's so like I'd love to. I found somewhere too because this story talks a lot about or it pulls inspiration from Asian cultures and Buddhism, and
mhm.
that parallels the story of Buddha and like when he started his journey of self discovery and enlightenment, he cut off his hair beside a river, and so I think
Yes,
they're like this is his finally his start to his actual journey to enlightenment. And I think it's so beautiful.
it's so exceptionally well done. Like again, like you were saying, just the technically the season is so good. It's beautiful to watch. The score is amazing. Like the
Mm.
music's just fantastic. And yeah, that whole sequence, like I love that they are able to let moments breathe and kind of give it the time that it needs, and not have it be like they know when to not do too much, which I think
Yes.
is really
That's so
important.
rare. It's so
Yeah,
rare to find today.
like it reminds me there's this one storytelling podcast that I listen to that's fantastic, but this guy was like, not everything needs your help, like talking about like making like whatever
Mm.
artistic project, like a movie, a book, like what, like you don't, not everything needs you to do something or your thing or whatever to it, right? Like sometimes less, or like understanding when you don't need to change whatever, like is able to be a more impactful thing. And
Mm.
I think that's something that, yeah, a lot of people like will try to be like, oh well, no, I need to like make sure I do whatever like thing to it, that way people can see or know that, like, just like adding more that you don't necessarily need to do there, like just let the thing
Let it
be,
breathe. Let it
yeah,
live.
like be what it is. and the show does that really well. The whole sequence at the end is, yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh,
Like them cutting, and it's such a
and it
like,
going down the river.
it's so such strong visual storytelling, but then also huge moments for both their characters. Like that's a, as you were saying, like a big step to Zuko's like new path and him on his journey, but then also such a huge moment for them because of what their hair means in their culture, and kind of you can see
Mhm.
where the path that Zuko's going now, and like kind of hints at where his character and how his relationship like with the Fire Nation and what he views as like what he needed to do or should have done, like how that can kind of be changing. It just works on so many levels. It's so good.
And I like too, it's not him, because there's the inscription on his knife. I found out both of them have these knives with them, and the inscription on it, I think it's Mandarin, but it translates to never give up without a fight. And I think that's so beautiful, because I feel like it could be like, oh, he's given up. He's cutting off his ties, but he's not. Like, this is his new way of fighting. He's gonna take the leap, leave the Fire Nation. He's a fugitive, and he's not giving up entirely. He's not ending his life, I guess, but he's like, okay, I'll approach it from this way now. He's still going to fight.
He's just like completely reevaluating and like readdressing his worldview essentially, and what he needs to do. And it's so cool. Zuko's so great.
Zuko's the best.
The show just
obviously, yeah, guys. If you don't know, we like this show.
It's seamlessly like, I mean, it's just what all good shows do. But the way that they're able to naturally evolve the characters and put them on these new, or like kind of new, but also like forecasted paths that you can kind of see throughout the whole show, because it's not like the longest show, right?
Yeah,
it just does it so well, and it
does it quickly in time, and they don't need a lot. I feel they show a lot visually. I think that's a huge benefit to this show.
It's just the thing of like letting the thing breathe, like knowing when, we don't have to over explain everything, we don't have to overshow everything, like we can just let
what the
live
moments action did.
Like the moment. That is true.
Not gonna get into it.
We don't have to this season. It's great. A little bit next episode, but no, yeah, it just knows less is more. Like, it's such a cliche and stereotypical thing, like point now, I think,
but it's true.
There's a reason for it. Like, it is just, you don't have to overdo everything or over explain or overshow or whatever. Simplicity is good. Having things just I don't know. I was gonna say it's like
evolve
subtext
naturally.
Evolve naturally, but then also, like a lot of the subtext that they have in the show is great too. Like, they just like will present things that are like, you can read super on their face, but then like really dive into, just kind of like the whole point of what we're doing.
Like, nothing is without meaning. Nothing anybody says is without meaning. It all has a purpose. There's no wasted space, which is why I think it's ridiculous to call any episode in this entire series a filler. Nothing is wasted space. Everything has use. And I think, too, that even also reflects the theme of the show and this pull from Asian culture and from Buddhism. And nothing is without it. Like, there's nothing to waste. Everything has its use, to use all of everything. And I think that's so beautiful. Like, it's really reflected in the DNA of this show. It's so deep. It's not just surface level. And that's, again, why this is so amazing, why that's so rare to find. Nobody wants to put that work in anymore.
You can just feel it through and through. And that's part of, I think, why it's just such a, I mean, it's the reason we're doing a podcast about it. How many years later?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not doing that quick math. It's fine.
It was, I think 2008 it was released.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So like 16.
We're still talking about it. You could still overanalyze it and still learn new things.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're talking about the episode. Did we say everything we wanted? Did you say everything? Anything else that you really loved about this episode?
I think those were my big points for the stuff that's happening in the episode itself.
The episode itself.
And directly revolved. But yeah.
All right. So guys, when we come back, we are going to dive more into the episode and how it contributes to the overall narrative of the series. So we will be right back.
Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. In season 1 of the podcast, we discussed how book 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender compared to the live action series. While we eagerly await season 2 of the Netflix series, we will be living up to our namesake and discussing how this episode contributes to the overall series and the story in the world of Avatar. Kate, let's start with you. How does this episode, The Avatar State, contribute to the overall narrative in the world of Avatar?
I think in this one we get a lot of good seeds planted. I use that metaphor a lot, but
I
we
mean, it's a tried
see.
and true.
I tried to do. It's true. That's why people say
Yeah.
it. I mean, we get lightning bending. We've seen
Yeah.
it once before, but we haven't seen anybody produce lightning.
Where did we
That
see it
is the
before? Why
sickest
am I
thing.
blanking on that?
Iroh in the storm, it goes to hit the ship and he
Right.
redirects it,
We
but
did.
that's
Yeah.
natural lightning. So
Yeah.
we don't know yet that you can actually do that.
Like
So
generate it
you
yourself.
can generate it yourself.
Yeah.
And that's going to be huge. That's going to
Is that
come
the
back
first?
later. This is the first, I swear, this is the first
It's
time we
no,
see it. I could be wrong.
no. You're right about it's the first time that we see it generated. I was thinking, is this the first then sub class of like bending, right? Because there's a lot of
Oh,
those now at this point, right? As we get later into the
I
series,
guess
but like
does
because
ice count as a
I don't
subclass?
think so, because I feel like ice is such a like I feel like they don't treat that as it, because like every waterbender can do ice, right? Like that's
Yeah.
how that. So that is an interesting point though, that they kind of like don't treat that as a subclass, because like we don't see metal bending yet because we don't have Toph.
Yeah. hmm
We don't get lava
We
and all
barely
that
see
stuff
earth
until
bending.
Korra. Yeah, like we just have
This is our
Aang doing that,
first, we're
so we
really
don't have
seeing.
anything like that.
Mhm.
I guess if we count, no, because Roku's doing the stuff with the steam and the fire, whatever. We were talking about that and how like he's kind
Yeah.
of doing stuff there. But yeah, anyways, so
This
this
is
is
really
definitely, I think it's the
our
first
first
kind of
subclass
sub
of
time of seeing the subclass, which are like a huge
like
thing.
more
They're
rarer ones, I would say, than ice.
yeah, um, which is
Because
just
what's
such
one
a
of
cool.
air?
I don't think there
Flying?
is. I know that I've seen a
Eh,
little I've seen I'm pretty sure they're fan made, but like the charts that will have the different
yeah.
like bending and like the subclasses that come from them or whatever.
Guys, let us know. Leave a comment. What is a
Um,
subclass of airbending?
I don't think that there is the one though. I'm pretty sure they just get air, which is pretty OP.
Pretty OP.
I mean, it kind of is,
Tornado, storm.
uh,
We're
but
anyways, we're getting distracted. But um
yeah, seeing
we
lightning is
get to
cool
see
though,
lightning bending, which is gonna come back way later. We're gonna need that for the finale.
right?
That's becomes useful. That's also Zuko's arc. The episode, we'll get to that episode, but where he's trying to learn it, he's like, hit me with your best. I want to say hit me with your best shot. That's not what he says. That's the
Oh,
song.
missed opportunity by Zuko. Come on, how does he
I'm
not?
gonna make
How
I'm
does he
gonna
not
make
know the
that TikTok
classic?
edit. And
Um,
then we also get to see, or we get to learn, like we just talked about before, um, more about the Avatar state and why that's
yeah.
really important.
I think it's.
Like,
I mentioned it in the first segment, but I think it's so funny how much it is just straight up a cheat code in the series. Because like by the time, like I like that this episode establishes that like, oh, this is just a weird thing that we're gonna like kind of make up some different rules as we like go along and just like be like, oh yeah,
mhm.
by the way, this is also like how this thing works. Because like I don't know, just him being able to in the finale at the end like unlock what he needs to be able to unlock from the Avatar state. They're like, well,
Yeah,
we wrote ourselves into this thing where we kind of had to get out of it, and like the reason that it
yeah.
works there is because there's just so much goodwill in the show from everything else. You're like, okay, yeah, like I can follow, like
You're
I
like,
can
I'll
follow you
follow
on this.
this.
Yeah, and that's
Mhm.
fine. But I just do think it is hilarious that that's like this is just a straight up video game power. Not that bending in general isn't right, like, but like
Yeah.
it's just the
But
straight
I
up
like,
like,
they show it. You have to learn it. You have to get better with it. It's a muscle.
mhm,
You have to work out.
you have to
It's
upgrade it
not
with
just
XP.
pure magic. You have to upgrade it with XP.
um,
So I think
it
there's a
is.
lot there we get. Yeah.
It's kind of like a video game power.
I
um,
mean, aren't all powers?
I mean, you can make that
We can
argument. It's just
argue.
it's so funny. I'm like, you think about like supercharging it. It's like the like supercharging you like hit both buttons and you're like, oh, now I'm in the Avatar state. Well, that's not how it works because you can't turn it on and off, as we talked about. He has to get really emotionally distressed, which is a big problem. Um,
Which we
but
don't
yeah,
like
I
to
mean,
see.
yeah, we don't like to see that, but it's cool. I mean, the Avatar state is just such a crucial thing in the lore, and so anytime getting more about that, I think is really like that's a
hmm
huge going to be important long term. Like anything directly about the Avatar itself, I wouldn't say like him, but just the Avatar as a person is a really big
The Avatar
this
lore. And
yeah,
I like too
like
that we get more of a description of what it is. Like we get that before we knew like, oh, the Avatar state, he can kind of
is this thing that he can go into and
like all powerful, but we really get why. Like he connects to the knowledge of every single past Avatar. And I love that visual that always shows up where it's him looking back at the line of all the avatars.
such a good like motif. So
I always
great.
love that visual. So I think that's really great that we get that because that's very important to know. Also, it's a good explanation of why he can become all powerful. Because it's every
and it's
avatar
also
ever.
it's a good explanation of why we got to see like Roku take over, right, at the temple, because it's like, oh well, that's what the Avatar state is. It's all of them. They're all in there just hanging out. I like to
Just hanging out in his
what's the
head.
canon on like how like are they all the avatars just chilling in this like liminal space? It's
How they
like
react, how they hang out with each other.
because like I have to assume they're not in the like normal spirit world, right?
Oh,
Because like
wait,
they're
this is a
not.
good question.
Are they in the spirit world,
Where
or are
are
they in a
they?
different like? Does the Avatar have its own like liminal space spirit world thing where they're all just chilling? Like,
Because they could be called upon to talk to him.
yeah, like how does that?
I'd like to imagine them all just chilling together in a room with like a little coffee machine.
Like how does?
And
Okay, now I'm interested in the logistics of this though, because how does that work with the? Because they also though can be in the spirit world because we've seen them in the spirit world, right?
we have seen them in the spirit world.
And they can interact in there. I know for damn sure that they do in the live action one because that's when we see Karuk or not Karuk.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but like,
Hmm.
so like, I wonder if
Wait a second.
if
I
they're
think
just
we're onto something here.
is there just this a huge Avatar mansion in the spirit world that just has like they
Avatar
all just
Mansion.
have their
Kind
all
of
their
like
own
what's in
rooms
Greek mythology. They're Mount Olympus. I wonder if they have a Mount Olympus.
just in the spirit world?
Yeah. This
That'd be
is
kind of cool.
guys, we'll get back to
There's
you
just
on
a
this. We're gonna think
pantheon.
later we're gonna think about this more. Maybe come back with a segment where we talk about this.
Like
Because I'm
Fallout,
interested.
it's like a Mount Olympus or like a Camp Half Blood type layout of all the like avatars.
Camp
Like they
Half
each have their
Blood.
houses for like the different for the earthbending ones to
Wait, I love
kind of.
this. This is like I feel like a cool fan theory too.
This would be such a
Where they
funny.
all go.
Imagine a reality TV show that's just like in the Avatar like neighborhood.
Keeping up with
That's
the
all the,
avatars.
yeah, that's just all the
And it's
best
them
Avatar left.
fighting.
Just like hanging out. They like go to
Like
brunch.
who would not like each other? What two
Yeah, which of the
avatars
ones
would
are like,
hang
oh, I
out?
can't believe you like aligned with whatever general and the war of whatever thing happened. Like, why
Yes.
made such a dumb decision like right here? And they're like, yeah, and then like so I had to clean that up because of whatever, right?
And the other
That's how
girl
we should.
pops up. She goes, "That's my opinion."
Yeah, that's how like we get the expanded mythology of the full timeline of Avatar is through keeping up with the
All right,
Avatars, their
we're
reality
pitching a new
TV show
show here.
on the Mount Olympus in the spirit world.
Anyways, now that we've got off on a great train here.
Oh, that's amazing. Though. No, but I do think it's super interesting every
See,
every
every
time they
episode
prove it.
poses these new questions. And you
Yeah,
can go
like you
so
could
deep
just
into it like this.
because it's such an interesting like world and lore. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I have to assume they're all just chilling in the spirit world. I guess either that or that's a like their own liminal thing.
This
But
is
either
really
way,
gonna bug you.
yeah, I know. I mean, now I really want to know the logistics of it, but it's fine.
We'll get
But
to
yeah,
that.
that's how
Anyways,
he can
more
like
things from this episode that contribute to the overall
this
narrative
overall
of
thing.
the
The Avatar
show.
state, we got that
Not Avatar Mount Olympus.
lightning. Yeah, I mean, I know you already touched on that, but that is just a really cool. I think it's like the introduction of being able to do like other things from the main bending like properties is such a huge thing and a
I
really
remember
cool
first
idea.
seeing that and being like, oh shit, we're getting serious now.
It's also just the coolest thing. Like I saw that and I was
Too.
like, oh, I want to be a firebender so I could throw lightning around. Like, are you kidding
Fuck
me?
yeah.
Like, and I also do like that it's too like they don't really get into it a whole lot in this episode, and they didn't previously, I don't think, because I don't think Ira had mentioned it yet, because I'm pretty sure he gives Zuko the lecture on it in this season whenever he's trying to learn it. But like that, it's a like leveled up version of like not everyone can like throw lightning around. I think it's a cool thing, and it's a, like one I like the idea that it, like Azula's just a prodigy like to start, but then also is like
Yes.
really like honed that. Like it's a cool, it gives a lot to her character, but then also adds a lot to the like not mysticism, but the general like allure, I guess, of like lightning bending. You're like, oh, like only a select group of people or whatever can do this. Like you have to
Mm.
be like super skilled or like prodigy or whatever to be able to do this. And then that also will then make it more impressive or more of like a hill for Zuko to climb whenever, and like it makes it a bigger deal whenever he's able to do that, like eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And so like just adding all of that in there with the inclusion of like this subclass of bending, which is already a cool enough thing, and then like making it
That
more
you can
badass,
do
and then
other
like
things. Yeah, that fire benders aren't just fire.
yeah,
It really
it's
opens your eyes, I feel. It's very, I remember seeing that and be like, oh, you could
mhm.
do more. And then
Yeah,
also,
and I mean
we see her blue fire.
yes, which is so sick. Also, love that. Like it's just so
Mm-hmm.
it's so many like one small thing just like says so many different things immediately and then opens so many different doors for the story to explore and like get you thinking about more of the like what can come from that and like oh if this is a thing I wonder like what this means for that and like we eventually
Mm.
get metal bending because they start like exploring the elements more and it also is one of those things that just feels like such a natural progression of the rules in the world that they set up from the beginning. It's again where like,
Mm.
it's the same thing as the characters. Like it's just so well thought out to start, and then you get and it's so interesting. So you just get so many
Mm-hmm.
things that like when you ask these questions that naturally pop up from what you've already like started with, like from the base. It just one feels natural, and then two is just really cool stuff. Like it's just
Really cool
awesome.
stuff.
Yeah,
That
I
too,
mean
and I
that's
also
the
like it. I think it's such a great choice artistically too, because
mhm,
knowing that they're setting these two characters up to eventually have the big fight at the end,
right.
having her fire be a different color is
I just thought
so
the
smart
images are flooding my mind of the
visually.
duel. It's so good. It's
Um,
like those are they're the
because
best. We'll talk about it.
it's just easier to see. It's
Yeah.
easier to keep track of, I guess. For I mean, you could say for the age level of the audience, but for any audiences in general, it's kind of
I mean,
hard to
visually,
draw
it's
and
just
see
like
and be able to
it
tell
makes
whose
sense.
fire is whose.
Yeah. It just
Mm-hmm.
creates one like adds to the contrast between the two of them and like
Mm-hmm.
visually, yeah, it makes it so much easier to read just in like it's just a better choice and also just looks cool. Like
Yes.
it's a win-win-win for all those points. But yeah, just introducing the blue
Mm-hmm.
fire and then also yeah, lightning bending is such
And that too,
a
that
lot.
blue fire is hotter.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, they're saying that she draws, I think this is later, or it's more of a theory. I don't think it's ever said that she's
Hmm.
blue fire, like it's hotter because she's angrier or fiercer
Hmm. Or just like more in
than,
tune with what she like needs
mm,
to be like channeling that properly, I guess. Right? Because like that's a big part of what comes from the like bending and like exercising it well. And like it's
mm-hmm,
part of what Iroh is talking about too, with like Zuko and like the level of control and just like I don't know, just all of those things kind of contributing to that.
yeah.
Um
And I think
and
it's
being
just
able
too, like, Zuko isn't, not that he isn't angry, he's angry, but he's not,
mhm.
I, like, Azula is a different type of angry. She's,
It's the kind of like it goes back to what they were kind of talking about in I'm forgetting the episode name now, but like the other I think it was the Firebending Master maybe, but whenever
mm,
he's talking about it's when Zhao has the like showdown with his pupil. I'm blanking on his name, but and whenever
oh,
his
Commander
people
Zhao,
yeah
right? Yeah.
yeah Zhao, but whenever he's like having the argument right he's the pupil, but whenever he's having the argument with like his teacher and the teacher previously is talking to Aang and he's like describing how like firebending is and like how fire is just this like how it operates as an element in comparison to like the other ones and like the destruction and kind of
It's
just like
alive.
yeah and like like the consuming nature of it and that kind of thing and like Azula more accurately or like taps into that as opposed to how
Mm,
Zuko is like that's just and it's part of his character arc like his character arc is him realizing that he's not that right and so
hmm.
it's part of the reason that like and of course that doesn't mean that like he's a bad firebender obviously like he knows what he's doing but like it's
Yeah,
like it's
he
just a
gets
big
there.
difference it's a big difference between the two of them and how they kind of like operate
Hmm.
um yeah so it definitely sets them apart more they're like their whole rivalry and all of that is just so fantastic like yeah,
It's
it's
so
so
harsh.
cool
All
to
the
see.
words she says to him during their fight. It's so,
Oh,
first of all, it's so little sister fighting older
she's
brother.
so mean.
I tried to
It's
say, like, as a
so
kid, you try to say
funny.
the meanest things possible.
She's so rude.
She goes
Dude,
low. Oh
She's
my
literally like, oh,
God.
by the way, like, father blames you for the entire catastrophe at the North Pole, like, thinks you're the worst. I don't even remember exactly, but she's like, you're the worst person ever, essentially. And you're like, okay,
Yeah, he's like, damn, hit him
damn.
where it hurts.
She's like,
Holy
he's
jeez.
embarrassed of you. Like, this is all your fault. You're incompetent. You suck. Like, oh my God. All right. I mean, sure. Go for it.
Like,
The whole time I'm like, yeah, tell him.
yeah, tell him. Such a girl boss.
No, she's
So
straight
girl
up
has hobbies.
the meanest. But
It's
no, I mean,
so
she's just,
cruel, but
it's so ruthless. Like, it's just what she is going for. And like,
mhm,
she's like, well, like, I want to be the ruler and commander of all this, essentially, and like the Fire Nation above all. And like, you can't get the job done. So you're not worth it,
mhm.
essentially. And I'm better than you, by the way. And also, here's some blue fire and lightning.
Yeah, like I'll just second. It's just a
Yeah.
great setup of a new villain and this new rivalry that we're going to be seeing for the whole rest of the series. And that's
Hmm.
really, it's really going to take over the whole series. I mean, she becomes almost, because we don't get to see Ozai a lot, which
Hmm.
reasonably so, it's really great to have her
Yeah, that's one of the things
on the
that I think
ground as,
is probably even arguably more important in this episode than the Avatar state stuff. Like, as crucial as that is bringing in Azula to establish a episode to episode more like on the ground villain for everyone,
mhm,
like for Zuko and for the gang, and how those relationships then evolve because of that. Like, that does so much for this show that you just don't get with Ozai being in the background. Like, that
mhm,
works and worked for the first season, and also because Zuko filled that role. But
mhm,
once like he moves out of that, you do absolutely have to have someone that's on that ground level and that has that level of interaction with them. And like bringing her on to do that is just like the perfect fit for that, and really just propels the show. And then yeah, I mean, I also agree that I think that the rivalry between Zuko and Azula takes over the show, and the fact that like I think of like the highlight from the finale for me is definitely like their battle over the battle between like Aang and Ozai, because also like
yeah.
I mean, I think the Aang and Ozai thing, and we'll of course dive into this like way later, but like it falls a little bit under the traditional like you've built up the final battle thing so much as like this thing that,
The
and
final
like you
boss
also,
fight. Yeah.
and like you also know that the hero is gonna win, so it's like okay, but like the Azula and Zuko of it all is just so emotionally like,
It's
oh
where's
my
that going?
God.
Emotionally charged too. This
Yeah,
is, we
like
start to build up the emotional charge, and just even that interaction at the end where she's saying all those things, that's like, oh, okay, they have
it
a
does that, like
real
yeah,
emotional rivalry here. There's really something going on here that's mental,
it's
not
just
just physical.
it's
And I do
such
like
yeah.
that contrasted with, I feel like, too, story wise, this might be going back to just something that I really liked within the episode. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the Zuko and Aang almost kind of going through, they kind of mirror each other, I think, a lot of points during this whole series,
Mm-hmm.
especially here, because I think they're both being emotionally manipulated by somebody bigger within this episode. Aang, in the way
Yeah.
that this man is saying, if you're not going to kill him right now, you're at fault for everybody dying and everybody continuing to
Mm-hmm.
die, trying to poke the bear and get him to do what he wants. And Azula's doing the same thing. Like, father wants you home. Let me hit him where it hurts. Let me, confuse him. Because even Ira's like, this doesn't make sense. Katara is that base for Aang being like, this
This doesn't track. Yeah, like this is
this
not
doesn't
the
track.
correct way to do. Yeah.
It's like, it's a very cool little mirror that you're like, wait a second, now you're showing us that these two kind of have similar experiences. Like, what does that mean? Kind of as a
Mm-hmm.
prep for his redemption, and maybe he's going to come back and join. He's human. He's not.
It
Which we'll
continues
get into the
doing.
next episode, more of him being human. But
Yeah, I mean, like it continues doing what they had done in the Storm as positioning
yes,
like both of
yes.
them as the two leads of the show, right? Like it does that
Mhm.
more and is showing more of the like. Yeah, I honestly hadn't even really thought about it in that way, but yeah, they are both being like essentially like bossed around. Well, not bossed around
Mhm.
directly. Well, Aang kind of is. Dude's like, hey, you're gonna do this, you're gonna
Yeah.
do this. Like we're gonna throw mud on you, and like that is such a
They're
funny
mad
bit.
at you.
He's
The
like, this is
caffeinated tea.
oh, that is so funny too. He's like, am I like, am I glowing yet? Do I have more energy? Like, I can't. Am I talking fast? Am I talking loud? Like, oh, such a great bit.
It's just
Um,
him on caffeine.
yeah, um,
They're like, he can talk Ozai to death.
which would be
So
hilarious.
cute.
But yeah, no, like the fact that it is that similarities between the two of them where they are kind of being
Mm.
manipulated in the situations and they're struggling with that and like going against that. And yeah, I think that that does also tie into more with Aang seeing the like and the larger arc that he's on and the larger consistency that we see with his character and the fact that he always wants to um, he will always go against what might be the easier thing, or it may be the
Mm.
harder thing, but like he wants to do the right
Mm.
thing, like whatever the right thing he like determines that is. Like he is very steadfast in that, and it's something that like he'll continue to do, and it's a big thing that we'll like see as we get more into like intense things in season 2 and 3,
Yes.
and then ultimately too in the final like fight, like him finding another way. Like he's like, no, I have to do this the right way. Like this is
Yes.
there's a way for me that like I morally can't live with myself or do whatever like if I don't do it this way. And yeah,
And
you
that's
had
cool.
mentioned it.
That's contrasted with Zuko because now he's like, "Ah, this is the easy way. I'll take it." He keeps trying to take the easy way, and we
Yeah,
see that's not
consistently.
working.
Oh, that's so good because it honestly, yeah, like Aang in this episode is seeing like in a very like condensed time frame the fact that there is no like taking the shortcut and cheating, like practice or doing the right thing and like
Hmm.
the longer road. Whereas Zuko is like consistently trying to undercut that and like consistently
Mm.
fails because he's undercutting it and trying to take the
Oh,
easy way out
ah!
and not like and not
We keep
doing the
doing that. Like, oh,
like
it's
just
just
real,
so
yeah,
good.
it's no it is it's perfect because it's Zuko realizing and it's Zuko showing the fact like the lessons that Aang is already like learning and he's showing the like other side of it. Like Aang is like, oh okay, I
Mm.
do need to like consistently do things the right way, and then we get to see Zuko not doing that and being like, see, this is why it doesn't work. And
Hmm.
it's just like that over and over again. And then I even started thinking about more into season 2 and 3 and I'm like, yeah, I mean Zuko just continues to not have a good time.
Not having a good time,
Yeah,
but he keeps
so
getting up.
he does
They
he's a real
knock him
trooper.
down. He gets back up.
Yeah, always. But no, that's so cool that they again show it in that way, and that it's just such a pivotal part of Aang's character, and like him being like, no, he has a strong moral compass, even if he sometimes will like he is very repeatedly susceptible to being momentarily swayed by
Hmm.
people like elders, like anyone that's older than him and like trying to give advice or whatever, like he'll for a second like contemplate whatever they're saying, but then by the end of the episode, like every time he's always
He'll
like,
go back to
no.
doing what he knows.
Yeah, he's like,
And we'll
no,
see
like
this with the next episode as well.
yeah, exactly. Like it's just a consistent like, no, I need to do the right thing. Like I know what the right thing is. And I think that a lot of that definitely comes from his upbringing as like an air nomad and a
Hmm.
monk. Like that's definitely something that was very much like instilled in him. Um, and so it's cool that that's a very consistent through line for him. And we just get to see that on display over and over. Um, it's very nice. It's very good.
It's
Good.
very nice. Very good.
Just
So
good,
good.
good long storm storytelling right there.
This episode is so beautiful. I love it. So many good things. What a great way to cement ourselves into season 2 and of where we're taking our journey.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It really just like it sets the
Hmm.
stage so well for everything to come. And then there's even it doesn't dive into too much either. Like it doesn't try to
It doesn't
um
it
like
doesn't overdo it.
overstuff.
It doesn't feed you too much information. I like that they don't bother. Like, I do like that they still have those previously on right in the beginning as a way to show you what previously happened instead of having to put that within the episode. Or I know a
Hmm.
lot of shows try to do that to, I guess that's like an older 2000s thing. Shows don't really do they, right? Am I,
I don't think so.
like,
No,
very
we
few
normally just
shows do that
get
anymore.
the previously on thing most of the time. Um
Hmm.
yeah, but I was thinking that this episode does a good job of like it doesn't stuff all of the major things that we'll see from
Hmm.
season 2 in here. Like Toph
Oh, yeah.
is a huge thing, and like we're not near that yet. So that like that's it. It does a good job of establishing things and getting us back into the world, setting up the
Hmm.
long term things, and paying off on the stuff that had been set up in the first season, and just kind of like resetting things up without
Yeah, they don't
over.
ease you back in,
Yeah,
which I like.
which is nice. It's
And
very
also,
good.
I feel like too they start us off with a lot of very heavy concepts as
Hmm.
well. The show, it does not shy away from the dark concepts, such
No,
as
not at
I
all.
mean, we're talking about death in war.
I mean, you've got, yeah, you literally have General Fong pointing out like the casualties of war. He's like, look at those guys down there.
You're
Like those were
killing
the,
people.
yeah, and like those are the lucky ones.
Oh,
Like they came
this
back,
is a
and you're
kid
like,
show.
damn, dude, all right. Like you didn't have to. That's why I think it's so interesting that yeah, they really do like they have no qualms going into that and talking about that. That's a consistent thing that they will do in the show, and kind
Oh
of
yeah.
it's, I mean, honestly, it is kind of wild to think about the fact that the entire backdrop of the show is 100-year-long war. Like, I,
Mm-hmm.
I think that because it is a kids show, so we don't get, obviously see like bodies strewn across a battlefield,
Yeah, we're
like
not going to
blown
see
apart, right?
gore.
So like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get that visceral, like this is a war of people dying all the time, and like the kind of horror that is, like as in your face as other things,
Mm-hmm.
but still like that is the subject matter,
You
though,
still see the toll
technically.
of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they
They
still
don't shy
very
away from.
much, they're interested in approaching that emotionally and narratively, even
Mm-hmm.
if they're not obviously going to go to the lengths like graphically that some
Mm-hmm.
other projects would. Um, but they're able to do a very compelling job with that still and get all of that across, and it makes it all the better. It's
Mm-hmm.
wild, honestly, to think about that. As like, oh yeah, there's just no, like there's just been a war going on for that long, and also I like that they continuously will, like they did it a lot in the first season, but I like that it's paid through and like followed through in the fact that Aang does continuously
Feel
feel
guilty.
the, yeah, like he feels the guilt of the fact that this has been happening and he's been gone, and he feels like it's his responsibility. Like that doesn't leave him as the show goes on, which I think is really important. So that's something that I could definitely see becoming less of something that you would put emphasis on in the series the longer it
Mm-hmm.
goes, but they make sure to never really forget that and put that in there. And I think that's really crucial too. It just adds a lot of weight to the
Mm-hmm.
story, and then also to Aang, um, to see that, over and over.
I agree. Oh, I love it. It's so, obviously, like, hey guys, by the way, it's good. We think
Yeah, and
this
then
is
of course,
good.
like all the normal like technical stuff. I mean, the animation just continues to be stellar. Like the paintings
I
are
remember,
like
yeah, this episode
it's
started with some beautiful background paintings and they flow so seamlessly with the animation over top of it. They had some bits, I know, where it's like you could tell what rock in the wall is going to move because
oh
it
yeah,
looks different.
yeah, because
There's
it's
obviously
you
some of
can tell
that, but it's like handmade.
I
It's
mean, it's gorgeous.
done with love. It's almost
Yeah.
like a watercolor. I went to the Met yesterday and I saw
Oh, okay,
ancient,
flex.
like, it, by the way, I went to the Met yesterday. Yeah. It was my best friend's birthday, but we saw like
Nice.
we went to the Asian art section and they had all of those paintings, like
Oh, okay.
what are they on the scrolls? And I was like,
Yeah,
oh
I
my
don't.
God, it looks like the Avatar backgrounds. They're pulling from everything.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful stuff, honestly, and it's really cool to see that continuously. And like, I mean, there's only so many ways that we can say, "Hey, the show's real pretty," and the animation's good. Like
Yeah.
I mean, they just can. That's something that you can just expect from the series. Like, it'll look amazing. The action will be cool. They nail it that way, like on all the
Hmm.
technical aspects through and through. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about um, the whole this episode
the
and the
whole
whole
thing.
narrative of the show? The whole thing. The whole
I
thing.
think that covered pretty much all the points that I had for this one.
Hmm.
Diving into it, but yeah, just fantastic stuff to start the season.
It's fantastic. We get a lot about the Earth Kingdom, lightning bending, Avatar State. It's a great start to season 2. Deep
Yeah,
themes. They're letting you know you're in for the ride. Budget is
exciting
up,
stuff.
and we're
it,
thankful.
it made money.
And it made money.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to Bending the Narrative. Next week, get those roses and chocolates ready because we're entering the Cave of Two Lovers. But before that, Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the Alex Batts, Batts.
And you can find me online at Kate the Official on Instagram. Was yours on? Where's yours on? Just anywhere?
Oh yeah, mine's just any of the platforms. It's fine. I
Sorry, but
totally
that was
get it.
my beat. I was like, where is he?
Yeah,
What platforms?
all of them, basically. Please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and any platform where podcasts can be found. Please be sure to give us a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. And you can also follow us on Twitter /X, Instagram, and TikTok at The Aspect Co. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Peter Fraser for providing our series music. Awesome stuff.
And Flameo Hutman.
Hey, thank you for tuning in.
If you enjoyed this show, then be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And be sure to check out some of our other shows and videos on the Aspect Network.
Thank you so much for listening, and Flameo Hutman.